Vayomer, Lecha from 1977, Tafshin Lamed Ches. We are a few lines into the second chapter, so let's just recap what we learned in chapter 1. So the verse says, Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha me'moladecha me'beis avicha el ha'aretz asher areka. Fairly famous verse, beginning of this week's parsha, that Hashem instructs Avram to uproot his land, his birthplace, the home of his father, and go to the land which God will show him. He doesn't even tell him which land. He says, you go, I'll show you the land I will show you. So, two mystical interpretations of this verse. When God says to Avram to go, so there are two, you can go in two directions. You can go up or down. So you're either coming down or you're going up. Now, the simple interpretation would seem to be that we're going up, right? You're leaving Terach, who's a Terach, you're living in a very ungodly place. You're going to the Holy Land, Eretz Yisrael, to Israel. So it seems to be going up. But that's in the simple meaning. But in the mystical meaning, it can go both ways. And the truth is, you can even fit the concept of going down into this as well, because essentially what God is instructing us to do is to leave knows and to go to an unknown world, which could turn out, obviously if God's sending him, we're assuming that it's for the best and it'll go well, but you don't know how it's going to go. In fact, when he gets there, things don't go. So really it could work both ways, even in the simple meaning. But mystically, the Rebbe says that the Rebbe explains it to be coming from above to below. You're going down. And what does it mean to go down? Why is it instructing Avram? That Avram means Seichel Hanela Mikol Rayan, the intellect that's hidden from all comprehension, from all grasp. What does that mean? So we know we have Chachma and Bina, commonly translated as wisdom and understanding. Chachma, the idea, and that stage, that your creative stage, where you don't understand something, you start looking for an explanation, and you come up with an idea, or you discover an idea, but at that stage, it's still undeveloped, it's still defined. Explaining it. That idea then has to be dissected, has to be developed, has to be brought into Bina. That's the next stage, where something could be developed. So Chachma is intellect. It's an idea, but it's an abstraction. It's an idea that's abstract. So that's Chachma. And Chachma is the highest level within, when we talk about Seder, Shtalshos, you talk about within the creative process of God. So it's Chachma, just intellect. And intellect, kernel of an idea. But that creative idea comes from somewhere. So there's a step. Chachma, even before that creative idea takes the shape of an idea, it's the mystery, the capacity or the ability to come up itself is not even comprehensible. So father is Chachma, Bina is Ima, is the mother. Av is the father, so that implies Chachma, the level of Chachma. When you call him Avram, Ram meaning exalted, so what's exalted means a higher level within Chachma. That there's Chachma. But then, which is the first step of Chachma, the highest level of Chachma, which is, in a sense, you almost can't even call it intelligent. It's maybe the capacity for intelligence that's beyond it, that's beyond even comprehension. So, in practical terms, what Hashem is saying is the highest level, Avram, Seichel Hanel, that highest level should come down where? Into Aretz, into the land. Right? To go from Avram all the way down to Aretz. And what's Aretz mean? He says, Aretz Asher Recha, Aretz is Malchus. We explained in the last class, why is Eretz Malchus, why is land a euphemism for Malchus? Because just as everything comes from the ground, everything grows from the ground, with regard to creation, that creation happens in Malchus. That everything that exists prior to Malchus is within the Creator. And then, Malchus, the lowest level of the 10 attributes, of the divine attributes, that level that then transfers it over, passes it forward to the next step, into creation. So, we have two levels of Malchus. There's the concealed Malchus, and there's the revealed Malchus. What is that? You're talking about the perspective of the creation. So what is the creation could come to its Creator. But as its creator is beyond creating, That element is a mystery to the creation. So Malchus, which is the level in which creation happens within the Creator, as it is still within itself, within God, that's mysterious, that's hidden. And then there's Malchus as it comes into creation. As Malchus becomes the creator of the next stage, that's already revealed. So when it says, El ha'aretz asher ar'eka, it doesn't just say, come El ha'aretz, come to the land, which means that Avram, the highest level of Chacham. What it means is, he says more than that. It comes, we're in Malchus specifically into Aretz Asher Areka, to the revealed aspect of Malchus, meaning to the lowest level of Malchus. So we see the full spectrum of the 10 attributes, of the 10 spheres. You'd have from the highest all the way down to the lowest point within Malchus, going from the highest point all the way down to the lowest. That's basically what the verse is telling us mystically. So that's this idea of Milmailo Lamata, coming from above to below, that Seichel Nela Mikol Rayin, Chachma, as it's in its highest level, should come down Ela Aretz Asher Areka, to the lowest level. And what happens as a result? What happens as a result is another interpretation of Aretz Asher Areka. The first means Areka is describing the land. That what level of Malchus, Asher Areka, the revealed level of Malchus, the lower level of Malchus. But then there's another interpretation of El Aretz Asher Areka. It's as if the verse is saying, God says, in which Areka I will reveal yourself to you. You will be revealed. In other words, what's Hashem saying? That when ascends all the way down from the highest point, all the way down to Malchus, and to the lowest level of Malchus, what will happen then is Asher Areka, that'll be a self-actualizing experience. Where Seichel Nela Mikol Rayin, this hidden intellect will now become revealed. Your essence will now be revealed. Or really, it's more than Seichel Nela Rayin is hidden. What is even higher than it, that'll be revealed. Okay, so basically what we have is God in to come to the lowest level through which the highest levels are elevated. To put this in less abstract terms, perhaps there's a Vayomer of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe says that Avram Seichel Nela Mikol Rayin. So he gives it. He explains it in intellectual terms like this. He says there's sometimes you have an idea or a conviction. You know something to be a certain way. Conviction and certainty. But you have no way of explaining it to anybody else. I know it, but I can't explain it. So he says that's what happened with Avram, patriarch. We know that Avram was very busy his whole life, teaching them monotheism. Right? He introduces that to the world. Teaching. Avram had a conviction in the deepest part of himself that he wasn't able to explain to anybody else. So even though he was educating people, there was an aspect of it that he couldn't communicate. After Lecha, he was able to. He brings an example of about Shlomo HaMelech, that it says that Shlomo HaMelech was wisest of all. The way his wisdom is expressed, he was able to explain things in 3,000 parables, metaphors. One is another level that if the more you can bring the idea down, the deeper that there is a fiction that a person could have that can't be explained. And that's what happened. Seichel Nela Mikol Rayin, and then the idea of Lecha coming down into Malchus, and that's how it plays out with Avram. That a conviction that he had before, now he was able to. Result of this experience is that when Seichel Nela Mikol Rayin, the highest level comes down to Malchus, Areka, it will then reveal its own essence. Will be revealed. It'll be enhanced. Okay, so that's chapter 1. Chapter. That the same is true. This whole story of Lech, this instruction to as well, and it's the story of the neshama, the descent of the soul in heaven, and then comes down below into this world. So again, also a yerida milmay lamata, this idea, this movement coming downwards. So he says like this: that as what happens when the soul comes down below, the soul is enhanced. In what ways the soul? Because prior to coming down to this world, the neshama is static. It doesn't move. Just like the angels in heaven that don't move. And we explained in the last class, what do we mean that it doesn't move? But it doesn't mean that they're higher and higher. Even angels are climbing. What it means is that they always remain connected to their prior state. They don't have an ability to Go from one extreme, a whole new status, a whole new extreme. Everything is always in an orderly fashion. But when the neshama comes down to this world, it becomes a mahalach. It becomes a mover, even higher. So that's the idea of Lecha. To the neshama, he says, you go down, and what's going to happen? Lech, you're going to become a mover. You're going to be able to go higher. Now, when we see the neshama comes down to this world, right? So, and this is what we started reading now in chapter 2, that the neshama comes down to this world. So it is elevated as a result. The neshama previous stationary wasn't moving, now becomes a mover. Can now reach a higher level. What level of the neshama does that take place in? We know that there are 5 levels of the neshama. There are 5 levels of the soul. There's nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yechida. Naran and chaya and yechida. Naran, chaya. Neshama, these 3 are the lower levels of the soul that are within the body. We have 5 levels which are in our body and come into the bodies. They can't handle them, so they remain outside the body. Connection, but we've discussed this when we learned Avata Tetzavah, we touched on this idea, the impact that the soul that's outside of the body has on the soul in the body, but it's all part of the same soul. It's not it's all the same soul. So what part of the soul comes down? Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, the lower part that comes into the body, into this world. So that it would follow, enhance, what level reaches a higher level? So the Rebbe says over here that no. The neshama, the elevation, the aliyah that takes place as a result occurs to the entire soul, even the levels of chaya and yechida. Even those levels are enhanced. Right? That's a very powerful statement. It requires a little explanation. How do we see that takes place? And also, before we can understand how that takes place, you have really another question that the Rebbe starts to ask. We'll get into that in a moment. Which is, if the statement is enhanced and is into this world. Where does that? What level of the soul? All levels of the soul, including yechida. We know that the level of yechida is a level that's totally one with God. Right. So when we say that even yechida, that level of oneness, is elevated, that's a very profound statement. To be able to get any higher than it already is, and yet we're saying that even on that level, it reaches. This idea a little bit of Yechida first. So let's take it from the top of chapter 2 again. Let's start again from the beginning of chapter 2. Okay, so just as we said about the Lecha, that Avram in this higher level is enhanced as a result of coming down into Aretz, and through that its essence is revealed. So the same is true with regard to the neshama coming to the body, because this whole instruction of Lecha is also a statement, an instruction to the soul. That this elevation in the soul of coming down here into this world, what is that? What does the soul gain from coming down here? Is that it becomes a mover. In Lech Lecha, the idea of Lech, going, it becomes a mover. So in the highest level. So just as we said about Avram, right? That's the highest level, and even that is coming down. So the same is true with regard to the soul, that even even that level of Yechida, the highest level of the soul, are also enhanced as a result of its descent into this world. So, seeming that's a very shocking statement. Why? Because Tagam Nikras Yechida, who notwithstanding the fact that the neshama, the level of Yechida, the highest level, is called Yechida. Why is it called Yechida? Because it receives from the let's skip the brackets a second. Nevertheless, through the neshama coming down from the high, its high, all the way down to the deep pit, it also aliyah in the level of 5 levels of the soul, even the highest level, are enhanced. This idea that the neshama is called, the level of yechida is called yechida because it gets from yachid. So the Rebbe says in the brackets as follows. Basically, he says like this. There's the Gemara, the Mishnah actually, that if you're walking past a pit and you hear somebody had fallen into the pit and he says, write a bill of divorce for my wife. So you do it. You can fulfill the request. excuse me, the guy's in the pit. You don't see him. You hear his voice. Demon. Maybe it's him. It's the halachic portion of the Gemara. Maybe it's a demon. You were able to see him. You could see it was a person. Didn't look like a demon. Looked like a human being. But it could be that. Disguised as a person. Sometimes demons take on the. Could be that the demon is disguised as a person. So the Gemara says no. The people walking by saw its shadow. It has a shadow. Not so much. The Gemara says no. So it says, yeah, demons, you're right. Demons do have a shadow, but he saw the shadow of the shadow. Meaning that when the light hits you a certain way, at a certain angle, so you have your immediate shadow, that's a much darker, more intense shadow, and then there's like a secondary shadow, a lighter shadow. You'll experiment with light, you'll take a look, you'll see how there's a shadow, and then there's another shadow. So that the Gemara calls the shadow of the shadow. So demons do have shadows, but they don't have the shadow of the shadow. A demon. A demon had a shadow. The person next to you is a demon. If you see, they only have one shadow, not the other one. If you're standing in the same. So demons have, so they have a babua, a shadow, but babua de babua lasluhu. They don't have a shadow of a shadow. What does this mean? So this explains like this: that everything in this world, everything in holiness has its counter in unholy, in the unholiness. Right? The verse Kahela says, "Zelu umazeh asalikim." Right? That Hashem created with an opposite. Right? So everything, an opposite or its antithesis in the unholy, its mirror image. And so that's true of all levels of holiness. And why is that? Partly because of the idea of free will. So you have to be able to choose. There always have to be two options. There has to be the good and there has to be the evil. So the good and evil will always mirror each other. There will always be two options for you. There's one thing that doesn't have, and that's God himself. Right? God himself, there's only one God. There's no God doesn't create, God forbid, a counter, demon God or whatever. God is the ultimate oneness. With regard to the neshama, to the soul, but only 4 of them have a counter. In other words, we learned many times in the Chassidus, especially in different Mamarim, you learn about the right. So everything that you want. It's always a challenge, always a pull in a different direction. But there's one level of the soul that can never be challenged. Right? We learn about this in the Yutas Mamarim, the Chanukah Mamarim. This is a strong theme there, right? The idea of the Pach Shemen, right? The one cruise that the Greeks couldn't defile. There's always a part of the essence of the soul that can never be contaminated, can never be perverted, can never be questioned, can never be challenged, can never be damaged. Why? Because on the highest level of the soul, the essence of the soul, there is no challenge. Is that? So that's what the Rebbe explains here. Because it's mekabelas miyachid. Shalachein, in the brackets, ein shayich shetia kenegda b'lumaza. It's not possible for it to have a babua de babua laslu. It doesn't have a shadow of a shadow. We relate this to shadow. We'll get back to that in a second. When we say mazeh asa, what are we saying? God says this created counter to this, to that. Right? So he makes something, he counters it with another thing. So essentially, all things have a counter in the unholy. There's the holy aspect of it, then there's the unholy counter to it. But then there's something that's not creation. It's essentially. So there is no counter because it's not a thing that's created. And the same is true with regard to the since soul is mekabelas miyachid. It's always united. It receives from yachid, from only God. We say Hashem echad. God is one. So when we say one, without one, we say the only God. Why do we say He's one? Because we're saying that even in a world where there seems to be two, He's one. So we talk about His ultimate oneness. But so that, notwithstanding its ramifications of that, there's also the idea of God being Yechidei Shalom, the only. He's the only existence, the only true existence. So that level of Yachid, there's only, which implies that there is no other. Right? One could mean there's two, but when there's only, there's nothing else. So this only only God. There's no counter to that. And the same is true with regard to Yechida. Yechida, same root as the word Yachid. It's called Yechida because it's one with that onlyness, that exclusivity of God. Put it in other terms, since Yechida is an essential bond with God, essence has no dimension. The essence is not you can't dissect it. You can't define. It has no borders and dimensions. Creation, everything that's created, even spiritual creation, has dimensions. So, a physical thing, the table has its table, it's got its physical parameters. But even ideas, you have an idea, has dimensions to it, where the idea begins, where it ends, the space it takes up and occupies. But the essence doesn't take up any space. It doesn't have any. It's not a zeh that was asa. And a thing that God creates, that therefore there's no counter to that. Moving that a step down, the level of Chaya is a transcendent level. So when we talk about the level of Chaya, so that would correspond to Ratzin, to will. So will is a transcendent faculty of the person. Will is stronger than intellect. Intellect is a specific thing, takes up specific space in your mind. Will is all over. You feel your. So will is in a sense infinite. Is in a sense transcendent. It doesn't enter into the person because it's infinite. The body is not able to contain that level of chaya. Nevertheless, it still has its dimensions. A will is also a something. It has the thing that you want, right? So as abstract in a sense as it is, as vast, as intense as it still has its dimensions. So therefore, there's a challenge also to that. There's a counter to that will. There's the will and created, then there's putting it in other terms, and serving God intellectually and emotionally in a way that a human being, we serve God with our emotions, with our intellect. That's sort of an orderly, a human, intelligent, mature way to serve Hashem. But then there is serving God beyond that. There's serving God beyond intellect, beyond reason. That's already level of chaya. Even when we talk about beyond reason, right, we're talking Chassidus about the idea of Amalek. Amalek is an irrational challenge to the irrational service of God. An irrational service of God. So the point is that all these things have something the opposite. But Yechid, and that's the idea of Babur, the Babur Leslu. What's the idea of the shade, to the shade of the shade, to the shade of the demon? That a shade, a shadow is not the thing itself. It's beyond the person, right? It's like sort of a trans. There's a shadow that represents transcendence. That would represent like the level of chaya, something that's beyond, outside of the person. The shadow exists outside of the person, just like chaya is outside of the body. The shadow of the shadow. There's the level of transcendence. So that's a reference to Yechida. So babur, the shadow of the shadow, that is Yechida. And that leslu, that there's no counter to Yechida. So what's the where does that leave us? This is telling us the profound statement that we're making, that each level of the soul that's as high as that doesn't have a challenge and a counter in the unholy. Even that level of Yechida is also enhanced as a result of the neshama coming into the body. That's a long. Okay. So Mavur become Rushim in many discourses, many mamakom that through the soul's service, specifically through coming down into this world where it can now fulfill its service, perform its service, that through that is elevated. Elevation that's completely beyond. Remember, we said that it becomes a mahalach. What's the idea of becoming a mahalach? The soul becomes a mover. The whole idea, the difference between a mover and a non-mover is the mover is there's no connection to a going step by step, totally beyond, above and beyond. So when we talk about being elevated, we're talking even in the source and the essence of the soul above that doesn't come to this world. That's also totally beyond what it had experienced before as a result of the neshama coming to this world. So it can move on. So this is also could be understood based on what's explained in a number of sikhs of the previous Rebbe. an aliyah l'Torah. When a person gets called up to the Torah, when a person gets called to the Torah, we call it an aliyah. What's an aliyah mean? So why do you call it an aliyah? So probably because the bima is usually raised in many shuls. You have to go up to the Torah. Raised, but the idea of being called up to the Torah. So, but beyond that, it's not just that that you're taking 2 steps to get up to the. You are elevated as a result of being called to the Torah. You are experience, and you're elevated as a result. So the Friedrich Rebbe talks about it, and the Friedrich Rebbe says that when a person gets an aliyah, receive an aliyah, called to the Torah, in all levels of the soul. This aliyah happens at all levels. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yechida. So the Friedrich Rebbe says that this aliyah, this elevation happens on all 5. Right? Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yechida. And then he continues and he says, Shehem gimel habechinois tachtim shnim ushlishim detevas noach. These 5 levels of the floors of noach. What does that mean? How do you get from one to, first of all, how do you get from one to the other? Second of all, how do you get from... Okay, so we're going to start getting into that. We have some time. That the person gets an aliyah, and the aliyah, that enhancement happens on all 5 levels. Getting back to our original point, that through the neshama comes down to this world, and it is elevated at what level of all the levels, even the highest level, even Yechida. Now, getting into the Sikh of the Friedrich Rebbe, where he says that all 5 levels are elevated, the soul, the whole soul, including the highest levels, elevated as a result of being called to the Torah, and this is comparable to the idea of the 3 floors of Noach's. What does this mean? This Fabrengen, or this in his room, this was a couple of weeks after the heart attack, and so there was a Sikha, there was a Maimer, it was all sort of woven together, but the Rebbe spoke about this idea of Noach. If you recall, last year we learned the Maimer Rabim Tafshalam Ches, the Maimer from the Shabbos, the Matzah, right? So the Maimer right before this one, and in that one the Rebbe spoke about the idea of Noach and the idea of raging waters. We're going to get into in a moment. If you recall from the idea of Yaakov Halach L'Darkei, Yaakov goes on with Noach. So let's keep that in mind. Then he says like this. Addressed it again the following week in this talk here from Matzai Shabbos Lecha. It says like this: on the pasuk enter the ark, enter the teva. So Baal Shem Tov has a vart. He says like this: that she'inyin tevas noach hu hayra b'seder avoda. That this idea, this is not the vart of the Baal Shem Tov. Getting to the vart of that. The Baal Shem Tov says, he doesn't say it over here, that the Baal Shem Tov says that the Teva is like the big boat that Noach made, but the word Teva also means word. So Baal Shem Tov says that a person needs to enter into the words of Torah and davening, of studying Torah and davening, saved from the flood, the raging waters. Okay. The Rebbe continues over here. The Friedrich Rebbe adds that this thing of the Tevas Noach, this ark of Noach, and the way the Baal Shem Tov explains about Torah and Tefillah, is hu ayira b'seder avoda. This is a lesson for us in our service of Hashem. L'kol echad v'echad miYisrael, for all of us in our serving, in our service of Hashem. So what is the vart that floors of Noach's Teva is the neshama. The story basically of the world. Neshama comes into this world, and how is the neshama saved from the raging water of that rage all around us, ungodliness, the evil that rages all around us? It's through entering into the ark, entering into the Teva. And here in the Teva as well, we're going to see soon these 3 levels, 3 floors. There's Tachtim, the bottom floor, Shnim, the second level, and Shnim and Shlishim, the 3rd level, right? The lowest levels would correspond to Nara. The lowest, the second level, the Shnim would be Chaya, and Shlishim would correspond to Yechida. So all these levels, everything is entering into the ark. So Rebbe says like this, especially when we're talking about this lesson of Tevas Noach, that a person has to enter into the ark, into the words of Torah and Tefillah, is especially appropriate now, this time of year, when now we're starting this whole idea of Yaakov halach l'darkei, that Yaakov goes on his way. That even though a person is going on his way, the verse says Yaakov halach l'darkei, and we use this term to express the idea that a person now is entering into. So the custom is that at the end of Tishrei month in holidays, starting really from the month of Elul, the preparation to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and to Sukkot and to Shabbos Bereishis, all this time we spend in a godly environment, right? Most of the month, especially in a year like this year, most of the month is holidays. There's hardly any work that you can do. So you spend all that time where in a holy. Then what happens afterwards? So we say Vayaakov halach l'darkei. We say we call it out that. Call it again after Shabbos Bereishis, and in that Vayomer we learned last time. Vayomer says that really that starts on a whole nother level in the week of Parshas Noach, because Noach is the first full week outside of holidays. Bereishis of full week of everyday life. By the time we get to Shabbos Bereishis, when do we experience a full week? When do we have a full week of everyday life under our belt? As part of Noach. That's the time of Yaakov l'darkei. What does it mean? Yaakov l'darkei. Yaakov goes on his way. Darkei, his way meaning his own personal life. There's the derech Hashem. There's the time in studying and learning and davening and celebrating Yom Tov. My life. So when do I enter into my own personal, everyday, mundane life? That starts now. So now that we're starting that Yaakov l'darkei, which is Parshas Noach, comes the lesson of Noach. The darker, you're going into this ungodly way, into a path that's fraught with danger, that's full of unholiness. The Mayim Hazedonim, the raging flood waters of the physical world. So you need to enter the Teva. Even though a person is going into everyday mundane matters and his own non-prescribed daily life, prescribed meaning for him. He has to do things to the point that we're talking about raging waters, right? We said about the Mayim Rabim, the flood, like a deluge of about making a living and all the worries from everyday life. So those things, since they're incessant and they keep hitting us, so that could distract that person. When I'm worried about how my meeting is going to go later. How could I sit and learn when I'm thinking about I have to pay my bills tomorrow? So all those raging concerns that don't give us any rest, that don't let us focus on what's important. How do we deal with that? By entering into the words of Torah. Right, this is the word of Hashem. Not only is he from the onslaught of this flood, as a result of this, the teva is lifted up to the point that the teva then comes to rest. What does this mean? So, okay, let's finish the thought here. Move on, Mizes. From this is understood. So that thought is finished here. That what's the idea of Tevas Noach? We can explain where he connects the idea of an aliyah, when a person's elevated Teva. The Teva, we said, the three floors of the Teva correspond. We'll get into more of it, more details next class in note 27, where we'll discuss that maybe in a little greater depth. Let's leave it on the side for now. But the point is that the lowest three levels that are in the body are the lowest level. The second level, Chai, is the second level of the Teva, and the third level of the Teva, that's Yechida. So the Teva, the ark, corresponds to all five levels. Happens to the soul. So just as in the flood, what happened? So now he's saved from the rain. But what happened to the Teva in the rain? Vatara mateva. When it starts to rain and the water starts to lift, what happens to the teva? The teva is elevated. What's elevated? The whole teva. Not the top floor elevated. Is we see that through entering into the words of Torah and Tefillah, Neshama comes down to the waters, and where is the Neshama go? He chooses and to daven, and he goes into that ark, those words of Torah and Tefillah. He's elevated. Who's elevated? All 5 levels that are stationed in the Teva. All 5 levels, everything's elevated. So from this we see the idea that even Yechida, the level of Yechida is also elevated as a result of the Yerida of the Neshama Lamata, through the Neshama coming to the body, even the Neshama is elevated. What's this idea of Vatar Mateva, Vatana Chateva? So it's 2 ideas. One is Vatar Mateva, the Teva is elevated. So the Teva is elevated, water. Right, and then what happens? The flood stops, and now the water starts to recede, and the Teva comes to rest on the Hore Ararat. Right, it lands on the Ararat mountains. Right, there's some people that say they somewhere over there, somewhere in Turkey, right, in the mountains in Turkey. Anyway, the point is that the Teva goes up with the water, and then it comes down. Vatana Chateva, the Teva comes down. It comes to rest on the mountain. The Teva comes down to rest. Vatana also comes from resting and pleasure. All are connected, all related. So what happens? The Teva is elevated. But what level of elevation, what kind of elevation, what only is enhanced by going up, but then it comes to rest. There's the idea of menucha. It says tzadikim ein la menucha. Right? Yelchu mechayel l'choyel. Tzadikim are never resting. They're not relaxing, because they're constantly reaching higher and higher. What happens? What's it say about when Mashiach comes? When Mashiach comes will be Yom Shekulei Shabbos u'Menucha l'Chayei Olamim. Time of Shabbos u'Menucha, rest. So going higher, climbing higher, that's a state of ascent where you're going up in a manner where there's no rest. But then there's a higher form of it that comes with pleasure, with I would say relaxation, but the idea of Menucha, that idea of rest, that's an even higher level. So the Teva, not only is it Vatar Mateva, does it go up, but it also reaches that ultimate level, the level of Vatar Chateva. So and that happens to all levels of the neshama, on all levels of the soul. We'll continue, Mr. Hashem.